What's up, Warriors fans? It's your main man, Max, here. As always, like, subscribe, and hit that notification button if you like what you hear, as I do post new Warriors videos daily. Now, it's been an interesting 24 hours in Dub Nation because I read a report that Jonathan Kuminga still wants $30 million a year over 5 years for his next contract. And I'm looking at that. We're in week 4 of free agency, and no bites have been had by Jonathan Kuminga outside of the Warriors qualifying offer. And the audacity to continue to ask for that amount of money is just baffling. Because at a certain point, you have to realize that the NBA is going through what I like to call a recession. Because of the second apron, teams are very hesitant now to bring to bring guys in on high dollar contracts that aren't guaranteed deals. Now, don't get me wrong, I do believe Kuminga is worth that level of money. It's just he hasn't shown it right yet. So it remains to be seen what happens with him and what kind of contract he's going to get. But I think it's important to go through the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to Jonathan Kuminga. Now, let's look at the good. Now, the good with Jonathan Kuminga, he's one of those rare ISO scores that you don't find a lot in the NBA because the Warriors really changed the game to the point where, all right, everybody wants to pass the ball, and that's great, but too much passing can lead to a turnover or a bad shot or just overthinking your offense. With Kuminga, you pass him the ball, his eyes go straight to the basket and his willingness to score. And that's important because these days they need guys, like I said, guys need to be set up for their shot. They can't really create their own shot as much as they used to. But Kuminga has a good, at least I would say, foundation in creating his own shot. He still is very young and he still has the ability to get better as he goes along. Like we saw in the Timberwolves series, he can be that scoring forward when you need him to be, even when things aren't exactly going his way. And that's important because we look at what happened in the Timberwolves. The biggest issue for the Warriors was the spacing with Jimmy Butler and Jonathan Kuminga. Neither of them are shooters, which creates sort of a clog since they both like to attack the basket. Now, don't get me wrong, he didn't really save the Warriors in that series as they lost in 5 games, but he was able to put up decent numbers to the tune of 24 points per game over the games he started. And for me, that's just telling me, all right, there's something there. There's obviously something there that's worth investing in. Now, is he the kind of guy that should get $30 million off the bat? Probably not, because you look at it, he hasn't really gotten a lot done yet. His sample size is still too small. But he's still part of an NBA champion team, as he, in his rookie year, he won the NBA title with the Warriors while he wasn't an overall contributing factor compared to, say, Klay Thompson, Draymond, and Steph. He still was a part of that roster, which is essential. Now, I think the best case scenario is there's a sign-in trade and he becomes like a ISO slashing version of James Harden, which I really do think he has the potential of being, but it really remains to be seen. He's got to get a little bit of a handle on who he is. Now, is he worth that guy who's $30 million? Yes. We look at the James Harden deal. Houston signed and traded for him, and they really paid dividends when they did, as James Harden is probably the biggest Houston Rocket franchise cornerstone since Hakeem Olajuwon. I mean, he's right up there. You think of the Houston Rockets, it goes Moses Malone, Hakeem Olajuwon, and James Harden. No, that's the big 3. Well, I guess you could say Yao, but the thing is you have to play at least more than 10 years for the Rockets to really count. Now, I guess you could say James Harden was 9, but all right, we'll put Yao Ming in there too. But he can be that kind of guy with his new team, but he's got to be realistic with his expectations. And I feel like the past few years, he has really warped his expectations of what's going on. As I said, that second apron is basically a death sentence for all teams that go over it. So you gotta understand where things are going. Now we gotta look at the bad. Now the bad is the inconsistency of playing time as well as injuries. Now, let's be honest, Jonathan Kuminga was injured a lot last season, and that's just a major red flag when you're investing in a young player. It's like, okay, you got you're a good player, but you've got a lot of injuries going through. And in those situations, you really have to, how do we put this? You really have to understand your market value. Now, we look at the restricted free agents. The big three are himself, Jonathan Kuminga, Josh Giddey, and Cam Thomas right now. Those are the big three restricted free agents, and they have had no bites, like absolutely none, outside of their own individual team. And their own bites have been minimal at best. I believe Josh Giddey was offered $20 million a year by the Bulls, and he said no to that. And I'm like, okay, you look at that. Giddey brings a lot more to the table than Kuminga does, so maybe he is worth a little more. But to that point, teams are starting to spread out the money and sign guys who can add value in different places, because you can't have, say, 35% of your cap dedicated to a single player and expect to be a championship contender. World doesn't work like that, unfortunately, at least not anymore, because of those harsh penalties in the second apron, as I've mentioned. And the other issue that Kuminga has is that he doesn't have a jump shot, and that's a big red flag. We saw what happened with Ben Simmons, and that was more due to his anxiety and his inability to hit free throws, but Ben Simmons doesn't have a jump shot either, and his career took a huge nosedive after that Hawks series in 2021 when he couldn't hit free throws. So they forced him to attack the basket and then fouled him, or they forced him to shoot, which he would eventually miss. Now, if Kuminga develops the kind of jump shot that gets you reliable field goal percentage from three, I believe that, you know what, he may be worth close to 25 to 30 million per year. Maybe not on a long-term deal, maybe on a short-term, like 3 years, 90 million. Okay, that makes some sense, but as of right now, you're not really adding much to the situation. And on top of that, you got to have at least 30 points per game, or not 30 points, but 20 points per game on your stat sheet to really be a $30 million a year guy. And Kuminga this year averaged around 17, and I'm like, you're not making that kind of money if you're average at 17. Don't get me wrong, he grabbed a decent portion of rebounds, but not enough to justify a high price tag. I believe it was like 16, 5, and 3. And that, for me, if I'm a general manager, I'm like, nah, I'm good. You know what, you have fun out there. Well, come back to us when you want to accept what we're offering you. And come back to us when you want to be a little more reasonable in your asking price. And for Kuminga, that's going to be the situation. Because we're what, 4 weeks in? Or no, 3 weeks in. Well, 3 to 4 weeks in. Right, 1, 2, 3. We're a couple weeks in. Yeah, you know what, 3 weeks in. This is week 3, if I believe. But we're 3 weeks in, and he's got no bites. Like, what? Training camp starts first week of September. That's 6 weeks away. And if you're not signed by them, that's just, do you really want to sit out the entire year? Because no team is going to give you what you want. So might as well just do what you need to do. So the bottom line is that if Kuminga really wants to get that money, he's going to have to bet on himself. And there's nothing wrong with betting on yourself. We've seen it multiple times, multiple different leagues, contract year players betting on themselves for a big payday. And I think overall that will pay off for Kuminga, as long as he's working on those certain things that make him better. If he's spending the summer making those jump shots and practicing that, and then, you know what, signs his qualifying offer to return to Golden State, and then next thing you know, he's hitting what, 35 to 40% from three. He's a restricted free agent next summer when teams have a bit more cap space. Now, if he doesn't sign his qualifying offer, I believe the best course of action is to take a short-term deal from the Warriors. Now, you take that short-term deal, okay, you're getting the money, but you hit the open market again in maybe 2 to 3 years. And either way, it's a win-win. Remember, Jonathan Kuminga was a G League Ignite guy. So he came into the league at 19 years old. As of right now, I believe he's 23. So if he signs a short-term deal, with Golden State, say for like 2 years. He'll be a free agent again when he's 25. And you're looking for, that's when players really start to hit their prime. And if you're looking for a top tier free agent who's young and say you're a team that's going nowhere fast, you can invest in a guy like Jonathan Kuminga, much like the Rockets, who at the time were going nowhere fast, invested in James Harden in 2012. So there is always that possibility. And remember, James came out as a sophomore from Arizona State. So he was a bit older. He was actually, what was it? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, he was about a year older than Jonathan Kuminga when he was about to hit restricted free agency. So the thing is, you want to invest in a guy that is ready to play, is ready to be that franchise leader. He's asking for franchise player money, but he hasn't proven himself as a franchise player yet. So getting that qualifying offer and betting on yourself is obviously the best way to go. Now that's all we have today for Warriors Latest. As always, like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and if you have anything to say to me in regards to a potential trade or Jonathan Kuminga contract, feel free to comment below, as I love responding to your inquiries. And as always, go Dubs.